Hey beauties, welcome back to Real Girl Talk Podcast Radio. I am your host, Sherry Ricard. I'm a medical professional, business leader, author, speaker, and adversity recovery expert, bringing you fascinating guests, business, beauty, and lifestyle tips to help you create a beautiful life. And always committed to keeping it real. Now let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast, ladies. My guest today used to be in the Bloomberg's newsroom in New York City, but she came into the spotlight after losing her fiancé in the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and then again after having an affair with famed golfer Tiger Woods. Rachel Uchitel was featured in the Tiger Woods documentary recently, and she is now sharing online dating tips, do's and don'ts, as she has just signed as a new spokesperson for Seeking.com. Today, Rachel shares her journey with Real Girl Talk. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So when your agent, Jack, reached out to me, I think Jack is over the whole gamut over there in LA, and he sent me some really amazing guests from your talent agency. And I saw that you were a dating relationships expert, and actually you're going to be talking and you're going to be representing Seeking Arrangement, and we're going to talk about that. But I want to start a little bit with your story, because you have, and like I told you before we started recording, you have a unique story. Some people probably know you in the news for different reasons, but I want to give you the opportunity to talk about you. Who is Rachel and how you started? We share a grief journey. You know, I told you that my son had passed away in a car wreck 13 years ago. Sometimes it feels like 3 days, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But I was surprised to learn that you were engaged, and he died in one of the World Trade Center towers during 9/11. So just kind of start there and then take us on a little bit of journey on where it's brought you today. I just want you to kind of share with everyone.
My grief for me actually started even before that. When I was 15, I lost my father to a drug overdose. And so I was at boarding school, as a matter of fact, and my headmaster pulled me aside during my lunch break and sort of flippantly told me that my father had died. And so I think my level of grief started earlier than that, when, you know, the man who's supposed to love you unconditionally and show you what unconditional love is, dies in such a tragic way. So I think that's where my level of grief and understanding of grief started at a very young age. And then 10 years later, when I was 26, my fiance, who I dated for 3 years, died in September 11th and in the World Trade Center. And obviously that was horrific, and I lost my sense of my future, right? I had planned everything with him. We were planning our wedding. And when you finally find someone, right? When you believe that you have finally found the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and then they're taken away in such a tragic manner, and you're so young, that really changes the course of your life. And I became a totally different person. The one interesting thing about losing somebody in September 11th, however, was that I didn't actually mourn by myself. So I feel like I got to lose him in a way where the whole world helped me get through that. Sure. And my photo was on the cover of every single newspaper almost in the entire country, because the Associated Press had caught a photo of me looking for Andy outside of a hospital, of Bellevue Hospital. And I was holding up a photo of him and searching for him. And so everyone in the world saw this photo, and I was sort of seen as a victim of September 11th. And it was a really devastating photo, even from an outsider, me being an outsider now looking at that photo, right, to look in on, and it brings me to tears, because I don't even see me in that, right? Sure. And it's horrifying, and it's my most vulnerable moment to look at. And I know that pain, right? I know that that moment that they captured, where I just was like, help me. I don't know where he is. I don't know how to find him. And I don't know how to ever find that sense of safety ever again. And you have to help me find that. And I will always be searching for that. And that's a feeling that I still possess, right? That I'm always looking for that. And I knew I would never find that again. And to me, that's really heartbreaking. But the world really helped me get through that loss, because they looked for him with me, and they were like, have you found him? Have you heard about him? Tell me about him. And they ached for me and with me. And that really helped me get through that time. But it was awful, and it's been awful.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Rachel. I mean, it breaks my heart, because I'm just picturing you standing in front of the hospital, and I can relate to that a little bit, in that, you know, when my son died, and he actually died in Memphis, and I was in California on a business trip when they called me at 2 a.m, and my listeners know my story, but when they called me and told me my son had just been killed, and I'm by myself in a hotel room in California, you know, it's like, what do you do? It's like your whole body, you just go into a completely different mindset, because it's shock, right? And I mean, and you talk about grief, and you have the denial, and you deny it at first, and you go through the anger and the depression, and you go through all of the phases of grief. And that's what I did. But I remember very vividly, and I was standing at my friend's house there in Memphis, and there were so many people, I mean, bringing food and just people coming in and out. And then, of course, my son was on the news, because here he was, an all-star baseball athlete at one of the big high schools of 2,500, and he was 4.2 National Honor Society, so he's big news, right? And so on the local news, they kept flashing his truck being upside down and talking about it. And it's almost like your body goes into a protection, because I remember thinking just really quickly, oh my gosh, that horrible mother. And then you think, oh my gosh, the mother is me. You know, so your body protects you from thinking that. And then you go into that survival mode. And I know what mine was, because everybody knows that my drug of choice was M&Ms. So I laid in the bed and I ate M&Ms to keep from being a drug or an alcoholic, because you can easily slip into those things with survival mode. So how did you survive? What was your survival mode? And then how did you get to Vegas from that?
Well, I don't know if you did this, but I noticed for me, I would do things, and I would be in the moment, and I would be all over the place. And it wasn't till a while later that out of nowhere I would start crying, and for me, it was in the shower. Oh, yeah. And I would find in moments by myself, it's going to make me cry, that I would just break down and start sobbing. Yeah. And it was because I was by myself, and I had been surrounded by so many people that it was almost like I forgot. So it would be in these secluded moments where no one could get to me, and I would be literally in the shower. And then I would get out of the shower and people would be around. So it would be like normal, but it could be like a year later that it just tore me apart, because then everyone thinks you're okay, right? And you've forgotten and you've moved on. It could be a year later that it's the anniversary and people start playing the pictures again. And for them, they stop and they're like, oh my God, it's so sad. But for you, the memories are in your head every day. So you remember, and for them, they only have to remember it one day a year, right?
Right, exactly.
But it affects you every day. You look at a plate or a wall, or the light switch might remind you of how he would flip on the light switch, right?
Right. Crazy things. Right.
Yeah.
I know. So, I did the same thing. I turned it was really crazy, because my husband, after about a year, and nobody bothered me, I kept his room the way it was. But after a year, my husband came to me basically like an intervention, and said, look, you're killing the rest of the family with your Bryant shrine that you have in here. I mean, you could not turn your head, and there was not a picture of my son. And they let me have my way for about a year. And then they basically said, stop. Like you're killing us, because you want him to surround you. That's how you're grieving, but you're killing us, because that's not how you grieve. So one thing that I did learn is that everybody does grieve differently. And then of course, everyone knows that I went on and got my certification in grief coaching, not to coach individuals, but to speak, because I had so many speaking engagements after that when the book came out, that I wanted to speak not just from experience, but from an educational standpoint, and understand the loss of someone that lost their fiance or lost their mom or the sister. I had not had that. I lost my
Mm,
son, and I could speak to that from experience, but I really wanted to speak from an educational healthcare perspective, and that what grief
yeah.
actually does. So I know what you're talking about how you want to disconnect. And is that the reason at some time you decided to leave New York? Was it just too much and you wanted to start afresh?
Well, in between there, I ended up getting married to someone else who had their own September 11th story, who was a friend of mine from high school, and it was like a safety mechanism for me. I wanted someone that would stick. I wanted to know that someone was going to be there, someone to come home to every night that was secure.
Right.
But there was no love story there, sort
Mhm.
of. So after about a year of being with him, I looked at him and I said, this isn't love, and I think that we should separate, right? And
Mhm.
also, I realized that New York possessed so many memories for me that I just had to get away from.
Yeah.
So I literally packed up my car and drove across country with a girlfriend of mine who was breaking up with her own boyfriend. And
Wow.
we packed my two dogs, a suitcase for each one of us, and we literally started heading to the West Coast. And we had nowhere to go. And I promise you that I got a phone call the night we got into the car, and it was a friend of mine who said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm with a girlfriend in the car and we're just driving." And he said, "Well, I'm opening up a nightclub in Las Vegas. And if you want, I would love for you to come work with me because it's opening in about a month. I don't trust anyone here. All the girls are either strippers or waitresses."
Mm,
And I had come from working in a background of working at Bloomberg News.
mm,
And he's like, "I trust you and you have a head on your shoulders, and I need someone that I've known for a long time."
yeah.
And he happened to be opening up Town Nightclub. And so I headed in that direction. And with 5 days of driving later, we landed in Las Vegas. And I rented a place there, and I started working for Tao in Las Vegas. And that's where
Wow.
my career just went that way. It was total fate that I sort of said to myself, you know what, just drop everything and say, like, I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to start new because I know I want love. I want a love story, and this isn't working for me. And I keep
Wow.
hitting walls by not choosing the right direction for me. And it's
Sure.
making me so unhappy that I can't get out of bed in the morning. And I just literally left everything. A man with a lot of money, a man who cared for me, but wasn't the right one,
Mm,
a good job, a good life. And I just literally left it all with no plan. It was like someone spoke to me, and I
yeah.
literally had a plan within a few hours, and
Wow.
it became a whole new life for me. So that's
Wow.
literally what happened.
That's interesting that I didn't realize that the place that you went was actually Tao, because I've been there. I went
Oh,
there. So we were there, gosh, I don't know. It's been so many years, Rachel. I can't even remember. But what's interesting about me being there is that I was there with a friend of mine, and we just wanted to check it out, right? And she knew someone, and you pass up the line and you feel really special, and you go in the door. And it was crazy because they had this back room, and you know what I'm talking about. It was this back room, and the Pussycat Dolls were entertaining in this back VIP room. And
uh-huh.
they let us in there, and it's just the whole experience, right? I mean, it's just like, I'm not a bar hopper or any of that kind of thing, but I like a glass of wine and champagne with the next girl, and I love to explore. I love to see new places and new things. And I was like, this is crazy. I mean, just the lights, there were so many people and all the different levels. And what is crazy though is my friend met a guy there, and 2 years later they were married.
I'm sure.
Well, I mean, people say, can you meet somebody at the bar, but they actually dated long distance for several months, and then he moved and they got married, and they've been divorced since then, but they were married for several years. And he was a really great guy, and he was there on a bachelor party, and they hit it off. But that's my only experience of going to to that bar, was with my friend, and she actually met a husband there. So that kind of brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. And that is,
Mhm.
I know, and we'll just touch on it because it's not like we're telling a secret. You were in the news. you had a documentary with Tiger Woods and down in the press about dating a married man, and you've dated other married men. What I want to ask you is, the person that dated married men, what do you have to say to someone that is seeking, maybe that's dating, maybe she's not necessarily in her 20s or 30s, maybe she's in her 30s or 40s and she's starting anew and she wants to date someone, but she doesn't want to waste her time with someone that may or may not have a job, or, has a lot of baggage and skeletons in their closet. So she wants to date someone that is successful. I believe that if you're successful, you date someone that's successful. I don't understand some women that ride on coattails, because I can finance myself. Maybe find her equal or level her up. What would you say about that person that's considering dating a married man?
Well, you brought up two separate topics to me in that question. But to answer the sentence about dating the married man, I'll start there. There's so many ways to go with that question, right? So when somebody is considering dating a married man, I will say to that, there are all sorts of reasons that people date while they're married, right? So if married people go on dating sites that are married, you have to know the facts about why they're doing that. Okay, so we'll start there.
Yeah.
So are people being transparent about why they're dating while they're married? Are they being secretive about why they're dating while they're married? So you would have to really know what the person's doing if they're dating while they're married, first of all. So but falling in love with somebody who's married is a very tricky thing. I would suggest highly against that.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. What have you learned from that you said,
yes,
I would never do that?
It never ends up good. However, I will say it is something that is common, right? I mean, people, like to shame others for it. However, it is a very common thing. People are married for a very long time, and people do have extramarital affairs. Having made mistakes 10 plus years ago, I will say that it never goes well for anybody. But as we all know, people that have been married do make mistakes. In this day and age, there are a lot of websites like Ashley Madison and this, that, and the other thing made for people that are married that want to have extramarital affairs. So in this day and age, it makes the temptation and the ability for people to cheat very easy and very secretive, right? Yeah. So I don't know how to maybe comment on that as much, because that's a really sort of dirty, thing that gets people in trouble and almost promotes people cheating and being scandalous about it. And that is not something that I agree with at all. When people are being upfront and honest about having open relationships, that's a totally different scenario that's up to people that are in relationships, right? So
you're talking about maybe a married couple and his wife knows, like it's open. Is that what you mean? Like, and he's married?
There are plenty of those relationships, right? And then I've never been in one of those, and I quite frankly, to be honest with you, don't understand those, because I think that causes a lot of problems and a lot of insecurities for people. And I don't get threesomes. I don't really understand that. I think that causes a lot of problems for people, because
I don't get it either.
Yeah. And so I think that a lot of people will say, oh, that will make our relationship a lot stronger because it'll free the man up to, be able to have some freedom and trust. And I think that's a bunch of bullshit. For people that just want to act like they're letting their man do what they want, and then they're giving themselves some confidence. I think that is a load of crap.
Yeah.
And I don't think women need to do that. And if their relationship is strong, they don't need to do that at all. And if they open their relationship up to other people, that is just going to, in my opinion, set up all sorts of boundary issues that will lead to cheating.
Right. No, I get that.
Now, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Let's speak from the standpoint of the woman. Okay. So, help us married women out for just a second. So, I'm married. I've been married for 23 years.
Okay.
And if my husband, first of all, if he went to an online dating site, I would hope that
wouldn't you kill him?
Well, yeah, I would, because here's the thing. I'm thinking, gosh, not just that, but how humiliating for me for
Totally.
a what if one of my I mean, don't you think they're risking the fact of getting caught? There has to be a point to where they don't really give a crap whether they get
Yeah.
caught, because if you're putting it's one thing, I guess, if you're doing it, secretively and you're meeting somebody, I don't know, at a bar, and or something like that. But if you're putting yourself out there on a website, you're asking to get caught, in my opinion. Okay, you're just
Right. And
asking.
what if your friends saw, or what
Yeah,
if you're,
have single
how
friends.
humiliating for you? And then if you stay with the man, then you risk this public scrutiny and everybody talking about you. I mean, the whole thing is just too much to have an us. And I
Right.
truly believe in an us. And how do you create this bond with this man and a woman if too many people have too many comments? Because you can't deal with it, the man can't deal with it, everyone's talking about it. How do you create this bond with boundaries if everyone has a comment?
I know that accidents happen. Okay, so you may be friends with, a man, or vice versa. A man may be friends with a woman, and then, or maybe a coworker. We spend a lot of time with our coworkers, sometimes more than we do our spouses. And I know things happen, and I know people that they have caught their husbands cheating, and I know people that have put them in the road, and I know women that stayed with them, and they ended up having an amazing relationship. They've been married for many, many years, and it actually strengthened them because they came together, and it was like, and they were better 10 years later than they were 10 years before. But I also know women that couldn't wait to put them in the road. So I
Right.
think it really just depends on your relationship, because let's face it, men cheat, but so do women. Okay. Women
Totally.
women cheat, and men cheat. But I know that the big thing is like, oh, just go find a man with money. If you find a man with money, are you thinking because he has money that he will never cheat on you, or replace you with someone younger 10 years later? If he cheats on his wife once with you, he's going to cheat on you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking. So with all of that, and then it kind of brings me back to, you were talking about your dad, you lost your father figure, and all of that. And then at one point, I didn't get to watch the show, so I apologize for that, but I know that you have a relationship with Dr. Drew, and I know that you were on that show, but there wasn't a drug issue. I think it was more of, yeah,
Love.
it was like love. So do you think that is what's brought you through some of this journey? It was the issues that you had because of your dad that passed away, and so you had some of it, an addiction to finding that right person after your fiance was killed? Or
Yes, I definitely have a love addiction issue. And I think that I went from intense relationship to intense relationship, mistaking that for love.
okay.
And I validated my worthiness by who was standing next to me. So I was addicted to power, and I wouldn't say fame, but I was addicted to a man who, if everyone else in the room wanted that man's attention, and they wanted to know him, and he was powerful, and everyone wanted this man, but that man wanted me, and he loved me, then I must be worthy, and I must be loved, and I must be lovable. It didn't matter if the money didn't matter. That wasn't what was attractive to me. It was the love, feeling loved. So that was my addiction. So people were like, oh, she's a gold digger, she's a this, she's a that. They might have had money, but that wasn't it. It was the power and the fame per se, because usually they were narcissists. Usually they were famous, but it was just everyone wanted them, and they wanted me. That was an addiction. And them saying, I love you, I need you, you're the person I have to be with, was so addictive to me, because I was like, well, if that person loves me, I must be lovable. And I never had that before. And so I could have been, homeless on the street, but if that person said, I love you, that was like $10 million to me. That was $100 million to me, so
Right.
that gave me my self-worth, so you forget all sense of anything else in the world. And, how do you say no to that?
Right.
And so that made it very hard for me to see clearly, I think.
Yeah.
And you don't realize who you're hurting, because you just feel worthy,
Right. You feel worthy, and you feel like you said you feel like that love coming from that person, and you mistaken that for love. And I think too, on both sides, whoever's married, you don't think about, look, there may be a wife and some children that are going to be destroyed through all of this.
I'm single. I don't have anyone to go home to. And when you're in a relationship with someone that, you feel like they're yours, right? And you're in a relationship and they're making you feel so comfortable with it, that's the person that you have the responsibility to. You don't have a responsibility to go home to someone and say no to them or yes to them, right? So, but I'm not making an excuse for it. At the time, that was where I was at. So anyways, to answer your question, listen, it always gets messy and it's not the right thing, but I'm saying I can understand why some people fall into it, and some people do it for different reasons. Some people are unhappy, or sometimes, people are in an open relationship, so to speak, because people are in marriages, but the love has died, the passion has died, and both people are somewhat okay with kind of going out of the marriage for passion, as long as they don't know about it. And we all know this, right? So you do see people that are getting it from other people, as long as they don't fall in love. But once the emotion is tied in, then people get very upset about it. So I think, and once the woman or the man is humiliated because they start to see that the spouse gets flippant and people start to see what's going on, then they get very upset. There's that side to things. So, I think it is common, but people don't like to talk about it, and it's not accepted. Of course, adultery isn't accepted, but it is common. And the stigma, the problem that I've had to deal with for the last 10 years is that the stigma that goes along with the other woman, is so offensive. The homewrecker, the mistress, she becomes a hooker, a porn star, a whore, just because she is the one that is the other woman, has been so offensive. And it has been something that I've had to live with for 10 years, as being known as the most famous homewrecker in the country. I don't really know why. Probably because I was with the most famous man in the world, I guess. But it's really an unfair stigma for me to live with, much less women to live with in general, because it's such a threatening term when there's two people involved in the relationship that were both willing partners, right? It has nothing to do with how threatening the woman is. I mean, so it's a really unfair stigma for the woman to have to be taken down to such a level that's so disgusting, and people had such an anger towards me, like they knew me and like I did something personally to them, which has been really hard for me to sort of deal with for the last 10 years.
Well, it's interesting.
It wasn't true.
It's interesting that you recognized this love addiction, and we're kind of going down a little rabbit hole with this, because I want to talk about seeking arrangement, and this kind of ties into that. So say you have someone that is going on a dating website. I mean, help us out. So how do you succeed? Because I don't promote women dating married men.
Right.
I do believe in God, and I am a Christian, and I believe that all of us as women shine our light in different reasons. And I've made mistakes in my life, and I would hate for someone to constantly beat me over the head with that mistake. If I made the mistake over and over and over again, that's something I have to deal with, because obviously it's become a pattern. It's not a mistake anymore. It's a habitual pattern. And I know that you've had to deal with that in your life. So we'll leave that there. But how do you succeed? Somebody that's going on an online dating, because you are the spokesperson now for Seeking Arrangement, what do you suggest that they do to make sure that the guy is telling the truth? Because I think some men can go on there, and of course they're trying to put their best foot forward, and they could say they're divorced or their wife is dying, and in fact she's home making dinner.
Totally. Well, I guess they can do that on any online site, right? And
Sure.
So we'll start there, right? So I'm now the spokesman for an online dating site, and online dating is $1 billion industry. And right now, as we're clawing our way through the pandemic, online dating is the place to be to date safely, and like the place to go, because people can't really go to bars anymore and saddle up next to somebody and meet them. And for your listeners who are trying to figure out how to date, obviously dating a married man is not the place to go just because you think that there's somebody who is, calm and sweet and nice because they have a family and they're a family man. That's obviously not the person you want to be with. You want to find somebody who is a nice guy. The place that I represent is called Seeking Arrangement, and they have dealt with a stigma in the last couple of years that has been really tough, and they chose me to represent them because I've dealt with a stigma that's been tough as well. And so we've partnered up to deal with that stigma. And I think you might find this interesting because you're a Christian woman. You probably, I don't know how much research you've done on it, but the stigma that's gone along with Seeking Arrangement is that it's dealt with sugar babies and sugar daddies. And that's probably something that you're against.
I didn't know that. So thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Well, because it's something that you can go on the site and you can see that it's older men. Sometimes it can be older men and younger women. And that's something that people stop at. And they're like, because the name is Seeking Arrangement, right? Well, we've now tried to drop arrangement because it's taboo. We tried to drop this sugar baby, sugar daddy thing, and tried to show people that our site is more optionality for people, because the deal is, if you don't start a relationship by putting out what you want up front, you're not going to have a successful relationship. You just won't. If you get on your fourth date and you realize the guy lives with his mom or is lying to you or is married, you're not going to have a successful relationship, right?
Yeah,
or the woman.
I know someone that has had to deal with that for a couple of times.
Well, there you go. So, but again, and not only that he can't afford to be dating you, or she can't, but she might not be available, or he might not be available. So to put out there what is true and transparent is the only way that you're going to have a successful relationship. And so our site really allows you to have a transparent platform that you can say what it is that you can give, what it is that you can receive, whatever, that will make it a transparent way for you to be open and honest with each other, because that's the only way to date successfully. And you can go on Bumble and Match and Tinder and Hinge and whatever they are, but you're really swiping and just looking at what people look like. That's one way to find someone, but that's very superficial. And for the most part, you're not going to meet the love of your life that way, right? Because you can't be upfront and honest. And the way to meet successfully online is to be able to talk it out up front and say what you want, right? So that's where we see that this dating app will work the best.
So what should they be looking for on a man's profile? Key things that go, okay, I like this guy. And then, so what are some things that they can look at and go, no?
So on the profile, okay, well, first of all, I would always say keywords they should always look for, right? So if they're looking for a family man, look at the keywords that show that they're a family man. I like men that have kids because I have kids, I have a child. I don't want someone that has never experienced having children. And for me, that's important because I like family and I like family oriented trips. I like a man that knows what it's like to have a family. So that's important for me. I don't like men that are like, oh, I want to be in Miami and be going out at night and going to Vegas and traveling all over the place without the kids. So I look for a family man. I also think it's really important for people to really up their profile pictures. And, it stands out to me when you see these guys or women that have these profile pictures in the bathroom, or selfies of zoo animals, or, ridiculous photos in, gym clothes and their butt sticking out. I mean, these are not people that spend time really letting you know who they are as a person, right? You want to have good profile pictures on there that let you know who you are and represent yourself in a way that is like, this is someone you really want to meet and spend time with. I mean, you want to look for pictures that mean something to you. And there's always other fish in the sea, right? So don't change who you are as a person just to be like, oh, this guy's hot. But who cares about hot? That's not someone that's going to be compatible to you. You want someone that when you read their profile, you're like, that guy just made me laugh, or this guy sounds interesting, or I want to hear more about what they have to say, right? So, and the other thing that I found is that when you have good banter with somebody on text message, what I like to call they give good phone, they give good text, you really are aching to hear more from them. You miss them over text message before you've even met them. Like you're looking at your phone, wondering if they've texted you again. Like, you really have a banter with them and a chemistry with them before you've met them. And online dating really gives you the opportunity to text back and forth with this person. So you have the chemistry. And once you have that chemistry, you really do know if it's worth meeting them, because then it doesn't matter if they look like a frog before you've met them, because you really do have chemistry. And what they look like won't matter, because you actually feel something for who they are as a person. And I love that, because then you have a better chance for really making it work. And I get so excited about people that have that.
If they find someone and, they think they may be a match and they're interested in them, what are some potential questions that she should ask him?
That's a really great question. Well, for me, I'll start with, I would skip all the superficial things. Like, if I would notice if they start to say like, oh, if they start with anything sexual, I'd throw them out immediately, that's out. And also if they start with, oh, what's the weather like where you are, I'd throw that out too, because then they don't know how to banter. Right. But if they jump right into like things that are interesting about you, like that really make you tick, like who are you as a person, and they skip the questions almost like they've written, like, well, what do you do, and what makes you laugh, but they go into more things that seem really natural, and you just have a dialogue. That to me is a home run, right? So I couldn't even answer your question off the cuff, but like if you go into a dialogue that just seems really natural and to flow, then to me that really works. But you could get into some sort of questions about their background and what it is that they like, or if they have things that they like to do, but I think that you'll start to see that there's a dialogue that will grow with somebody that you have chemistry with. But I wouldn't ask them, what they do for work right off the bat, or because then, I think the guys feel like you're asking them about money, or, I would let that flow. A natural dialogue just tends to flow. Do you know what I mean?
With my husband and I, what we had decided to do several years ago is to make sure that we were friends again and we were enjoying each other as friends. And I think that's super important, because we get bogged down in that dinner making and talking about bills and all of those things, and you kind of lose all the fun. That's not fun, right? And so I think that's why they seek someone as a married person. I know some of the women that I know whose husbands have had extramarital affairs on them, is they were just seeking some type of passion. They actually didn't love that woman. They ended up wanting their wives back. And I think a lot of them do end up wanting their wives back when all the flames burned out, right? But then it's kind of too late. The family is destroyed and it's too much water under the bridge. So what would you say to the woman that is not in her 30s and 40s? Or maybe she is in her late 40s and early 50s. Some of these older men that are successful want younger women. They want these 20-year-olds. What do you say to that woman?
Well, I think that women do forget that men sometimes don't want to be reminded to take the trash out, and don't want to hear about your daily trials and tribulations, and don't want to hear about your girlfriends and how much you hate them and what they've done to you all day. And,
Right.
Don't want to hear about how ugly and fat you feel. And, don't want to, hear how, oh, do I look good in this dress? They don't want to hear all that stuff. And they just want to, maybe do the hot stuff or whatever,
Yeah.
And sometimes the 20-year-olds are just hot, and don't seem so loaded with questions.
Well, right? They're not. They have no baggage. They haven't lived a life yet. They're babies.
Right. And sometimes they're just dumb, right? And they just, and dumb and fun, as we like to, look at them and roll our eyes and be like, oh, they don't have a lifetime of experience. But that's the point, right? They don't come with a lifetime of experience and annoyance. And we look at that and like scoff about it, but that's the fun part of them, right? And that is, I think, why men sometimes really like that, because they can go to them and the girls are just like twiddling their hair and being like, oh, I'm hot and sexy and fun. But sometimes older women, you know, I'm 46, whatever, forget that if we just maybe dressed up one night and was, you know, we were fun and not annoying and just like smiled more, you know,
Right, right,
our boyfriends might not find us so annoying once in a while,
right.
and you know, would like to be with us a little more. I mean, I know that I'm not in a relationship right now, but if I was, I know that my boyfriend would laugh with me, because the negative times that I'm with him, he would be like, can't you just be fun once in a while instead of argue with me, you know?
Right.
And I can tell my girlfriends that if that any of them that are in a bad place right now, I would say to them, just you know, lighten up a little bit, you know, and let your man feel like he's in a good relationship for a little bit, you know?
Right, right.
So I think that men just like to have it easy once in a while.
Yeah, and
I don't think the age that men would, it's not the cheating with the age because of the hotness. It's
okay.
just the lightness in a relationship. I mean, I know men who are in their 50s that they would cheat with a 20-year-old or a 50-year-old. It's just about feeling sexy, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and there's men that will cheat with, and then you look and you go, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe you cheated on your wife, is gorgeous. What is that? You know, I mean,
Exactly.
I think it just depends on the man and what's going on. And I don't understand it. I don't like it. It happens. Do I think that if your husband cheats on you, that you should pack your bags and walk out the door and no questions asked? Absolutely not. Because things happen, and that is your relationship, and that is your decision to make. If you choose to pack your bag and walk out the door, or if you don't and you want to make your marriage work, kudos to you. I think that's great. I think that in a relationship, we go through trials and tribulations, and I think that everybody's relationship is unique to them. And I'm not one to judge on what they do, because, you know, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody, it happens.
Yeah.
I absolutely do not accept the married man dating. And I know that you feel the same way after what you've been through, because what happens is it may be good for you in that moment if you're wanting to have an affair with a married man for whatever reason he tells you. It doesn't matter what he tells you. If he hasn't signed the dotted line of divorce, call me when you do, because all that happens is when all that ends, you leave a wake of destruction. And now you've destroyed children, and they get to see their mother cry, and they get all of these things happen behind the scenes that you don't get to see, but it happens. And so it's not a good thing. Like you said, it never ends well. It never ends well.
And even now, it's so hard for me, because even in my somewhat adult then too, but now I can say, you know, again, as 46, there are plenty of men now that are getting divorced, right? And it can take years to get divorced. True. But now I say to men, because it's even been reported in the paper even recently, every time I date somebody, you know, of course they'll be like, oh, is the guy divorced that Rachel's dating? Because people just love to bring this up. And I'll have to say to people, are you divorced? Like, really divorced? Because it's a problem. And men will always say, oh, I'm getting divorced. And I'll have to say, well, what the hell does that mean? Because I don't know if that means last week. I don't know if that means 2 years ago. I don't know how. And it's really, because men really could say anything, and you don't know. You don't know if the wife knows if he's getting divorced. And you don't know if that means he's living in the garage and they've just been quote unquote separated, and you don't know. And so, and you don't know if the kids know. And so I've now decided that unless they are really divorced, I'm not dating anybody anymore, because it really does leave a wake.
So what about, can we just pick up the phone and maybe call the wife and say, hey, what's up with the relationship?
Yeah.
You know,
I feel like we need,
if you really want to know if he's telling you the truth, you know, because I know you've had that. You've had it recently. And so I'm saying, ladies, if you're listening, pick up the phone. If he's legit, ask him. Say, can I talk to your wife about that?
It's getting to the point where I don't want to be the cause of someone's destruction, and I don't want other people to think that about me either, because I have a child, I have a reputation to uphold, and it also causes friction in your relationship, because you end up not trusting the man, you know, and also you don't want to be part of this turmoil. But I really don't want to date anyone who is still going through a divorce, because it's just too much. It's too much stress and too many problems. So
And I
not
think
doing that anymore.
I think most of them that are out there up to no good are going to say, I'm going through a divorce.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your online dating tips that you gave some of the young ladies. And Rachel says, stay away from married men. It's never turned out good for her. It's not going to turn out good for you. So there's men out there that are available that don't come attached to current wives. They may have children, and that's up to you if you want to date someone that has, has kids or not. But you certainly don't want to date them if they're already attached to a wife. Never good. Never turns out to be a good thing. So thank you, Rachel. I appreciate you. Tell everybody where we can find you online.
Sure. Well, I'm on Instagram at Rachel Uchitel NYC, and then you can find our online dating site at seeking.com. And please check it out, because we will actually be having me on there to help people with their profiles and help people find the people that they want to date. So I will be helping people with that soon. And I would love to help people with that.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I'll have to have my sister look that up. She's been single.
Oh, good. I would love to.
She's going to kill me for saying that, but it's no secret. My sister's single, so
Oh, well, I would love to help her.
Yeah, she's single, and she's been a single for a while, but she's holding faith that God has somebody out there for her. She just hasn't. I told her she needs to write a book on dating, because she's a dating expert.
Oh, good. Well,
she's very picky. She has not found that man yet, and she just won't settle.
As she should be. She should wait for it, right?
That's right.
He's out there.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
Thank you for tuning in all the way through Real Girl Talk. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you happen to have iTunes, would you do me a huge favor and leave us a rating and review of the show? That's the way that we get this message out to more and more people around the world. And giving us a review and rating, something good is going to come back your way. Plus, I know you're the type of person that wants others to live their best lives. So can you copy this link, share it to your friends, share it on social media? Remember, people need to be inspired. They need to have tips. They need to have business ideas more than ever right now. And I know that you can help me on this mission. Thank you again so much. If you want to be a supporter of the show, go back to realgirltalkpodcast.com, click Be a Supporter. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being a part of Real Girl Talk Podcast. And until next week, keep your encouragement tank full, your faith in God, and create your beautiful life.